relatives of these, this guy, in vacant lots. And we called them back then Decay's snakes, named after an early naturalist, James Decay. They changed the name to northern brown snake when I was a teenager, I guess. And this snake actually does occur into the panhandle. But the ones you find right here have now been separated into the species I just showed you, called the Florida brown snake. This is now considered a different species, the Midland or northern brown snake, which is found all the way up into Canada. And it's related to this guy, which at first glance looks like a darker variety of the Florida brown snake, but this is what it looks like rolled over. And it's called the red-bellied snake. Again, about the size of a pencil. This one is pregnant. It has maybe 8 to 10 babies inside of her. And they specialize in eating slugs. So that's a pretty easy thing to find. I mean, to catch. I mean, if you eat slugs, you don't have to worry about running after it, or you don't have to have speed, courage, or anything. You just find one and slurp it down. A little bit bigger is the pine woods snake. This one gets to be about 1.5 feet long. It's a beautiful rusty color on top and yellow on the belly. And it always has this white on the side of the face. The pine wood snake, as its name indicates, lives in pine woods, and you will find them in residential areas also. And they feed on little frogs and lizards. This guy lives in the panhandle only. It's called the earth snake, the rough earth snake. There's also a smooth earth snake, and they specialize in eating worms. Again, a pencil-sized snake that lives under objects. Very hard to find. And the smallest native snake to North America, the crowned snake, has a black collar and a black head. The rest of the body is sandy colored. They eat centipedes. That's about it. And they have a slightly toxic saliva that they can subdue these big centipedes that you sometimes find underneath logs. And that's what they eat. And I haven't seen one of these in a while now, and I'm afraid that we're losing some snakes to fire ants. I have a feeling fire ants are one of the culprits. Not just eating the little snakes themselves if they find them, but the eggs of the snakes. Here's another picture of that crowned snake. They burrow. They're champion burrowers. And finally, the venomous. Other than the coral snake, the venomous snakes we have in Florida are all pit vipers. And that simply means that, let me show you, I'll show you in a closer picture, but this one is the cottonmouth, or water moccasin. And notice the facial stripes. I think I have a close-up, yeah. Behind, from the eye to the back, there's a dark band bordered by a light band on bottom and a light band on top. That shows you the hallmark of the cottonmouth, and you don't even have to be close to it to see that. And again, look at the vertical pupil there. But the other thing is, pit vipers have a nostril and then a hole right there that they detect the warmth from a warm-blooded animal. They have heat sensors. So these guys come out at night and find mammals. But when they come out at night, it's mostly, they will eat roadkills. A lot of them get killed because they're looking for roadkill frogs and fish and other animals that were killed on the road. They get to be 6 feet long. They're very dangerous. Don't ever approach one. And when you do approach one, this is what you're going to see. The head, they go into a coil, the head sticks up, and then they open their mouth. And that's where it gets the name cottonmouth. But if you see one doing this, I wouldn't recommend doing this, but you could take a branch and put it in that snake's mouth, and he won't even close his mouth on it. This is just a big bluffing thing to chase you away. But once he goes out of that bluff, don't go near him, because then he could strike and really give you a nasty bite. People have been killed by cottonmouths. They get, as I said, they get to be about 6 feet long. These are the fangs folded up here. And this is a young one. Different color. Anybody familiar with the copperhead will see this resemblance here. They're in the same genus, Achistrodon. very closely related to the copperhead. As a young snake, it looks so much like a copperhead. See the yellow tail? Many of the pit vipers use that yellow tail when they're babies to lure birds, mice, frogs. They wiggle it around so it looks like a caterpillar or a worm. And yellow attracts the attention of some of these creatures that have color vision, like frogs. And then they grab the animal that's coming in to get a meal out of the snake's tail. But the copperhead, the water moccasin, and the pygmy rattlesnake all have yellow tails and use them. It's called a caudal lure when they're babies. But even a baby can give you a nasty bite, so don't mess around with the cottonmouth. Here is the copperhead. And the only place in Florida where you're going to find a copperhead, in a few counties of the Panhandle, mostly in these deep, moist ravines. And I was up there a few years ago and managed to spot a few of them. They're beautiful snakes. Where I used to live in Pennsylvania, we saw a lot of them up there. Here's how you recognize them. They have a series of hourglass or saddle-shaped markings across the back, and a copper-colored head. There's another example. See the pit, folks? Nostril right there. Pit, heat sensor right there. Vertical pupil. All of our pit vipers have that, and all the pit vipers in Central and South America too. You'll find the bushmaster, the fer-de-lance. They all are in that same family. They're mostly warm-blooded animal eaters. This one's eating a cottonmouse. Oops, let me just... Maybe the most abundant snake, previous to recent conditions, and I'll tell you that in a minute or so, the pygmy rattlesnake. I've gone out with Terry Farrell sometimes and his graduate students, and we found 25 pygmy rattlesnakes in 2 hours. So they're abundant in some places. The biggest one ever found was about 31 inches. So they're not very large snakes. Here's the tail, and that's all there is to the rattle right there. And it's so almost inaudible that you really have to be a couple of inches away to hear it. It's like a buzz. And it's something that I've never heard. I've never gotten that close to a pygmy rattlesnake to hear it, because you really have to almost be down near its body to hear that. Here's another one showing the rattle. But look at the beautiful rosy colors down the back, folks. It's got dark blotches separated by these reddish colored blotches. But they come in many different colors. Here's one that's a different variation. Here's one I found at Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge. By the restrooms, you know, in the middle of that black trail. Here's a black one I found up in the Panhandle. Not the Panhandle, I think this was Osceola National Forest. Here's the young one. Again, look at that tail. Again, the yellow tail pointed up like that to attract prey. Male and female, they often are found together during the mating season. And here's a baby that just finished eating probably a frog, with a big, big lump in its belly. And this one is eating an anole. This was at Lake George or Tiger Bay, I forget where I took this picture. We don't have this here, but it's in northern Florida. The best place in Florida to see this is Osceola National Forest. It's called the canebrake or timber rattlesnake. It's a color variation of the timber rattlesnake that's found all throughout the northeastern United States, up to Lake George, New York. That's as far north as you're going to find the timber rattlesnake. Lake George, New York, in the foothills, well, actually in the Adirondack Mountains, lower elevations of the Adirondack Mountains. But the thing that makes our timber rattlesnake in northern Florida different than the ones farther north is this line down the back, which sometimes is a reddish color, making it a very beautiful snake. They get up to 6 feet long and a very toxic venom. Now, I'm going to just show you a few pictures of ones I photographed in Pennsylvania, just to show you the different color varieties and a very interesting but some of the babies. They give birth in September after sometimes going almost a year with no food at all. Females fast for a long, long time. So this is the timber rattlesnake in Pennsylvania. These two timber rattlesnakes at a den site in September, getting ready to go into the den for the winter. And this is the kind of place where you would find them, folks. Lots of loose rocks that they go underneath, and they find these passageways to get below the frost line. And I've been to these dens, 15, 20 years. I was going to these dens, monitoring some of them, working with the Florida Fishing and Boat Commission, and putting pin tags in some of these snakes so they can identify them later on. And we would sometimes see 40 or 50 snakes in an outing at these dens. Then they scatter in the spring to different areas, except for the females. Females hang around and give birth. Look at this female here that just gave birth to these babies. And this female. They come in up in the north. Timber rattlesnakes could be yellow, or, yeah, look at all these babies here. All probably all from this female. They give birth to maybe 10, 12 babies. And that's a lot of babies that come out of a snake that size. But they will give birth almost always in the early part of September, before it gets really cold. And then they go into hibernation. There's babies crawling over the mother. And this is something I've only seen once, folks. But rattlesnake males go through a combat dance. And I was walking to a den in Pennsylvania, and I heard this thumping, loud thumping noise. And I looked down, and there were these two male timber rattlesnakes wrestling with each other. And they rear up and wrap their bodies around each other, and then one tries to thump the other one to the ground. And when one of them can't take it anymore, crawls away, and sure enough, there was a female about 5 feet away, watching the whole thing. And diamondbacks do the same thing. They warm-blooded animals. Here's the pit right there. This one is swallowing a young rabbit. And this one is swallowing a red squirrel. Unbelievable, the size of the prey. And when this timber rattlesnake finished the red squirrel, look at the body. It looked like two different snakes. The scales extend so much, the skin actually extends between the scales, so it looks like a different snake. Then they might not have to eat again for weeks and weeks. A timber rattlesnake could probably eat 4 or 5 chipmunks a year and not have to eat again. And our biggest venomous snake, the biggest venomous snake in North America, the record size is 8 feet long. Imagine seeing a diamondback 8 feet long. 3 days ago, I was riding my bike at Blue Springs State Park. There's a nice bike trail there. And when I got toward the entrance road going into Blue Springs, I saw these cars pulled over, people looking out the window. So I'm always curious about what these people are seeing. And I got off my bike and walked over, and there's this massive diamondback rattlesnake crossing the road, thicker than my arm. And people were photographing it. They had a really nice curiosity. But then one woman looked out of the car window, and I was trying to get the snake off the road. And she said, "That snake is attacking you right now." I said, "No, snakes don't attack you." And I just could not convince her. She kept saying, "He's coming right at you." I was standing where the snake, to protect the snake so you can get into the woods. The snake doesn't want anything to do with you. The snake wanted to get off the road and into the woods, which he did. I would say he's probably 6 feet long. Whoops. Let me just go back for a second. All right. Almost done here, folks. I gotta go back just a minute here. I don't know how that happened. Okay, here we go. Okay, timber rattlesnake, the diamondback. This is what they do. This is their hallmark. They go into an S shape and they rear up. And some really big ones could be 2 feet off the ground when they do that. They get to be a very, very large size. Usually, you can identify them very, very easily by the diamond shapes on their back. A dark diamond with a white outline, all across the back. And you can't, by the way, you can't tell the age of a snake by counting the rattle. They get a new button on that rattle every time they shed their skin. They might shed two times a year, 3, 4. Rattles often break off. So if you see a full rattle and it hasn't broken, that just tells you the number of times that snake shed. Every time they shed, a new button is added. And the rattle is meant to warn you not to get any closer. Here's a young one, just born with just a single segment to the rattle there. And they're usually much lighter in color than the adults. Another young one I found right near my house just finished eating a mouse. Even when they're newborn, they're big enough as newborns to kill and capture mice. Full-grown mice. This is the biggest one I ever saw. And it was at Cape Canaveral National Seashore. My wife and I were driving on the road in the beach area, coming out of the National Seashore in the Merritt Island section of Cape Canaveral. And we saw all these cars pulled over, and I said, well, why doesn't somebody just get out and lift that tree limb off the road? Because I think that's what they were stopping. And when we got there, this was on the road. And it was the only time in my entire life, folks, that I was intimidated by a snake. It was the biggest, other than that indigo snake, it was the biggest snake I ever saw. And weight-wise, it was even bigger than that indigo snake, by the way, I weighed it too, was 11 pounds. This snake weighed more than that. It had to be more than 7 feet long. I have never ever seen a snake like that. And it made me remember the pictures that you sometimes see from the 1920s and 30s, of black and white pictures of people holding gigantic diamondbacks that they caught. And that's what this snake was like. I felt so privileged to be able to see probably one of the only diamondbacks left that's that size. And it got across the road and into the mangroves for safety. But one of the guys in one of the cars that was there said, why don't you kill it? It makes good food. The last thing I would do is kill a snake, and I would never even eat one in a restaurant. I just don't like the fact that they're not giving any protection to diamondback rattlesnakes. Up north, timber rattlesnakes are strictly protected. Here's that same snake going into the grass. And that's a dead one I found. I broke killed one time. I just wanted to photograph to show you the fangs. This one had a double fang on one end, a single one. It shows you how sharp and how long they are. And I'm sure you've all heard of the Reptile Discovery Center or the Reptile Institute in DeLand. Very good place, educational. They will put on a great show, milking these venomous snakes, and then they sell the venom to research centers and hospitals. Look at the size of the head on that thing, and the venom going into the container. And the last snake I want to show you. They are the biggest problem now in southern Florida is the python. When I went to the Everglades in the past, in the 1980s and through the 90s, I would always see raccoons, opossums, armadillos on the side of the road. This last week I went there, not a single mammal, no mammal at all. And we drove the roads day and night, 7 days in a row, and not a single mammal. And the park rangers will tell you, as a matter of fact, there are none left. The pythons have eaten them all. They estimate there's anywhere from 30,000 to 100,000 Burmese pythons in the Everglades. And as if that's not enough, folks, they now carry a parasitic worm that's getting into our native snakes and finding its way up north, somehow in frogs or lizards and frogging, as it were, up north, and it's now found in pygmy rattlesnakes in our area. So it's the worst thing that ever happened to the wildlife of Florida, I would think. And they could get, the biggest one ever found, I think, was 18 feet. But the world record where they live in Asia is 26 feet. So these snakes, they could be almost as big as a reticulated python. Look at that one. These are pictures I did not take, these last two pictures. But like I said, there's hardly any mammals left. But snakes have lived through native predators before, but not this non-native one. And so same with other wildlife. But very quickly, these are the kind of animals that will feed on snakes, predators on snakes, just like they're predators on other animals. Snakes have their own predators. Raccoons, opossums will eat them, bobcats for sure. I took this picture, guess where? Where do you go to see bobcats around here? Lake Apopka. It's one of the best places I've had. They're almost, you get off your bicycle, if you're biking back toward the